how's it going? So, Crash Bandicoot. I've heard these games are heavily praised before, so I figured, why not review them? Actually, a while ago, the Saint of Time let me borrow them on the Nintendo Switch. I only got to play the first one, and then after I told him what I thought, he asked for it back. And then he gifted me the Insane Trilogy on Steam. Thanks, I guess. But anyways, you guys know the drill.
I wonder which copy of Blasto I'm gonna be using today. Oh, hey John, come on in.
How's it going?
Good.
The teleportation isn't working, so I just figured I'd use the door.
Oh, about time. All right, man, you hungry?
No, not well. Okay, yeah.
So what's up, man?
Not much, but since you gifted me the remastered trilogy, I figured we could review it together.
Oh, okay. The only thing is I'm expecting a video call right now.
Really? From who?
He's actually one of the Saints. He really likes Blasto, just like me, and he likes Crash too. Oh, speak of the devil.
What's going on, Carlos? What's up, John?
Oh, hey, it's Faltor. He's the saint of music. He also makes badass metal music.
Hey, what's up, Faltor? I know we're gonna do the no weapons challenge right now for Blasto, but John is over, but maybe you can join us for this Crash review.
Hell yes. I love those games.
All right, Faltor, let's go. Let's see if John likes them. He's told me he's heard so much about these games.
Yeah, he would like most of them for sure.
I don't know. I guess we'll see for sure.
This is so cool. 3 Saints reviewing 3 games. Let's do this.
Take it away, boss.
So it's time to review the original Crash Trilogy. God, I swear this is the only console Carlos plays. We are back on the original PlayStation for a review. Again. Last time we talked about the Spyro trilogy, this time we're covering a franchise that was more popular than Spyro. I've heard people praise these games and recommend it to me over the years. Let's see if these games are worthwhile. Let's see if it's worth the hype, or if it's, just overrated.
Overrated? Nah, man, come on.
In 1994, the Sony PlayStation was released in Japan, with the United States getting it the following year. There was a company by the name of Naughty Dog, which already had games like Ski Craze and Rings of Power under their belts. Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin were the masterminds behind it. Their latest project at the time was a fighting game by the name of Way of the Warrior on the 3DO. Remember that console? The one that has games like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties? No? Yeah, me neither. Naughty Dog sold the rights to Universal Interactive for publishing, and the company signed with Universal to produce 3 new projects. They set their eyes on the new upcoming console, the Sony PlayStation. Naughty Dog and PlayStation had a partnership that pretty much had Crash become the unofficial mascot for the console.
The developers at Naughty Dog wanted to make a 3D game, a concept that was really new back in the 90s. What Naughty Dog wanted was to take a 2D game such as Donkey Kong Country or Sonic the Hedgehog and give it a 3D perspective. Their main question was this: what would a 2D platformer be like in 3D? This idea that they thought of actually had a name. And John, you're going to get a kick out of this nickname. Naughty Dog said that if a 2D platformer such as Sonic the Hedgehog was in 3D, the player would spend a lot of time looking at the character's ass. Hence the nickname, Sonic's Ass Game. That was the initial concept before the development of the game.
At that time, Naughty Dog was mostly worried about motion sickness with the camera moving, so they decided on having a fixed camera at all times, which actually worked out in their favor when it came to the technical side of things. We'll go over that a bit later. Anyway, the developers needed a character for this adventure.
Naughty Dog wanted to make their character stand out. One of their biggest inspirations was the Tasmanian Devil from the Looney Tunes. You see the inspiration? Lots of spinning. Their eyes were set on Australian animals like dingoes, wombats, potaroos, and you guessed it, bandicoots. They initially chose a wombat, with his working title being Willie the Wombat. After a while, they changed the character to a bandicoot, and seeing how much the character crashed into things, specifically boxes, they decided that the perfect name for their character was gonna be Crash Bandicoot. Fitting name, wouldn't you think?
After a roughly 2-year development cycle, the game was released in 1996. The marketing for this game was honestly pretty crazy. It didn't match the in-game character, but a guy dressed up as Crash and was the star of the marketing commercials. The most famous one is where he goes to Nintendo and starts dissing Mario, showing off his own game. How bold, thinking your game is better than Mario games, Crash. How bold.
The marketing campaign still exists even now. Each time a new game is released, this guy dressed up as Crash makes a comeback. What I found most interesting is this. In one of the commercials, we got a glimpse of Crash Bandicoot's driver's license. Sex, yes. End, none. Rest, no way. Crash being addicted to sex is canon.
I don't buy it.
I do. Look at that grin. Says it all.
With his girlfriend rocking that body, I wouldn't blame him. After, Naughty Dog left to make other projects, with Universal keeping the rights to Crash and proceeded to flush it all down the toilet, sharing similarities to Spyro's future.
After Naughty Dog's games, Universal hired other game development companies to produce more games, such as the party game Crash Bash. The proper sequel to Crash 3 was released as Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex and went multi-platform. Wrath of Cortex had a mixed reception, however, with the overall view on it being negative. Crash also got his adventures on the Game Boy Advance and even got a crossover with Spyro in a minigame collection. After all that, Crash Bandicoot got his first open world type game, which was actually pretty cool despite the game being rushed. There were also a few more racing games that came out during this time as well. What came next is pretty much what killed the franchise.
Next was a terrible party game on the Nintendo DS made by Dimps. Oh god. After that, Crash just had to hop on the beat-em-up game bandwagon, just as Spyro did. 2007 saw the release of Crash of the Titans, featuring a redesign in all the characters. This is pretty much a sonic boom of the Crash franchise. Redesigns and gameplay focus shifts. Universal Interactive, known as Vivendi Universal at that time, was acquired by Activision. Crash Mind Over Mutant was then released. Despite the writing being hilarious, these two games ultimately didn't do so well. Soon after, Activision did what they did best, and stopped releasing games under that franchise. They sure love to cancel everything they touch, don't they? Guitar Hero, Spyro, Crash, pretty much all the stuff I followed back then.
I'm surprised how many games this dude has. After 9 years of not releasing a single Crash Bandicoot game, he was added to Skylanders. Then the remakes that everyone was praying for were announced, and people lost their mind. Eventually, the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was released, bringing Crash back to his roots. It was a remaster built from the ground up, developed by Vicarious Visions, which have actually developed Crash games before, like the Game Boy titles and Crash Nitro Kart. The game was a huge success and even started a trend with old games being remastered. Today we're going over the original trilogy, Crash 1, 2, and 3. Carlos played through the originals and the remaster, while I played through the remasters only, and Richard played both the originals and the remasters. We'll be using footage from both the originals and remasters. Coming from someone who didn't grow up with Crash, it'll be interesting to see what I think. Let's start with the game that started it all, the original Crash Bandicoot. Oh boy, let's begin with the story.
On the Wampa Islands, somewhere in Australia, there are two scientists by the name of Dr. Nitrous Brio and Dr. Neo Cortex. These two are experimenting on a bunch of different animals. Cortex wants to build an army and he wants Crash to be his general for world domination. Brio was warning Cortex that the Evolvo Ray wasn't ready, but Cortex decided to use it anyway. Guess he was a little impatient. That was lame, I'm sorry.
As Brio predicted, the experiment was a failure. Crash starts to run away, and with how smart this dude is, he manages to break out and fall out of a window. How did he survive that fall? Cortex sets his eye on the next victim for experiments, Tana Bandicoot, Crash's girlfriend. I mean, damn, I'm not a furry, but hear me out.
Carlos, this is the third animal character. Are you a furry? We won't kink shame, but should we get your wife a fursuit?
I'm not a furry.
Crash makes it his mission to go through the jungles, temples, Cortex Factory, and Cortex's castle to save Tana. You should have escaped with her in the first place, Crash, but whatever.
Yeah, to be fair, Crash isn't the smartest dude. I mean, just look at him. I mean, you can tell. Crash fights the local tribe leader and all of Cortex's past creations, Ripperoo, Koala Kong, and Pinstripe Pataru. Eventually, he fights Nitrous Brio and defeats him after he drinks his potion and turns into that Hulk-looking monster. Now from here, you're going to get one of two endings. If you got all the gems and got 100%, Crash can find Tawna and escape with her on a bird without even fighting Cortex. Kind of a weird optional alternate ending, but alright, whatever. It does give details about the other characters, but it isn't canon to the story. It's just an extra bonus.
Let's go over the canon ending. After defeating Brio, Crash faces off with Cortex and defeats him. Cortex falls down with Crash saving Tawna as they ride off into the sunset. That's it. The story isn't too long, not complicated at all, and the game barely has any cutscenes. It's clear that the focus of these games will be the gameplay. The one thing that's weird to me is that the 100% ending isn't the true ending. It's not a big deal, but maybe they knew that the majority of people would not complete this game to 100%. Who knows? What do you guys think of the story?
Personally, it exists. That's all I can say. It exists.
I agree. Also, it makes sense that the regular ending is the canon ending, because getting 100% is bullshit. Crash ain't the type of motherfucker to go above and beyond. There's no way he solved the stupid ass gem mysteries. Otherwise, it's a basic save the girl and defeat the bad guy. That's it.
The story is about as basic as you can get. I don't really mind it. It's nothing spectacular though. I do love Crash's design though. I can just look at him and find him funny. I mean, just look at the extra life tokens. Crash is freaking hilarious. All that aside, what is the gameplay like? We mentioned earlier that the developers wanted to make a 2D game in 3D, and with this game, that's pretty much exactly what we got. Not only was the PS1 being pushed to its limits with the graphics and hardware, it was also a super simple game with a bit of challenge. The main objective of every level is getting from point A to point B. Along the way, Crash will encounter a few different enemies. Most of them can be taken out with a spin, but some of them need to be jumped on. On a side note, spinning into enemies gives me a real sense of satisfaction with the sound effects used.
Also on your path will be boxes and Wumpa Fruit. Collect 100 and you get an extra life. There are different types of boxes: regular boxes, question mark boxes, extra life boxes, bounce boxes, arrow boxes, and TNT crates. For the bounce boxes, jump on them 10 times and they will break. Crash 3 and the remake shorten it to 5 bounces, thank God. Arrow boxes work about the same way, but won't break until you spin into them. The regular boxes could also have question marks on them, which will either give you one Wumpa Fruit, multiple Wumpa Fruit, or an extra life. Just be careful not to spin the lives away. Yeah, meant to do that. TNT boxes count down after being jumped on. They explode after 3 seconds, so get out of there. Just whatever you do, do not spin into them.
There is also a box with a tiki face on it. This box contains the witch doctor mask known as Aku Aku. What have I got? This is the game's health system essentially, as Crash cannot take a hit at all with Aku Aku. Crash can take a hit from an enemy or an obstacle, and when that happens, you see Aku Aku's feathers flying. He straight up sacrifices himself for Crash. What a soldier.
What a soldier. No.
If you collect 2 Aku Aku masks, he glows brighter and you can take 2 hits from enemies. If you collect 3 masks, you get a temporary invincibility where you can kill enemies with 1 touch and boogie. Aku Aku can't protect you from falling though, so watch out for bottomless pits.
The game is pretty much split into 3 level types. There are basic 3D levels where Crash either runs away or towards the camera, depending on the situation. For example, Crash has to get to the end of the level by going forward. Pretty standard. Another variant of this is where Crash has to run away from a boulder. There are only 2 of these levels though.
The second level type is the 2D perspective levels. Although the perspective is in 2D, Crash can still move along the Z-axis. Despite that, you will mainly be moving from left to right or vice versa depending on the level. Some levels even mix in the 3D with the 2D, which is pretty cool. The last level type is the animal riding levels. In certain levels, and by that I mean 2 levels, you will come across a hog. Crash looks directly at the camera and... What in the hell? These levels are on rails. There is no stopping in these levels. Basically, just survive and get to the end. These hog levels get a bit of variety to the simplistic gameplay of Crash Bandicoot by having Crash ride on something. We'll be seeing a bit of more of that in the later games. Also, quick side note here. Coco is playable in the remake after beating the first boss. It's mostly just cosmetic, but she is awesome. We'll talk about her more in Crash 2.
With all that being said, you guys are right when you say this game is simplistic. This shit is boring. I'm sorry to all the people who told me the Crash games were great, but holy shit, Crash 1 bored me. The level design is super basic, nothing really makes me like it, and by the near end, I just felt like the levels got boring. The level where the lights went out, unless I got a mask, was the most fun level for me. Other than that, god, the level design is so boring. It's low-key punishing too, but then they just give you lives everywhere as if that's supposed to help the level design. It doesn't. It just makes me want to stop. Even though it's simple, I don't think there's anything here for anyone. Your best bet is to play Super Mario anything. More simple level design, yet it's more fun. Mario is the standard for platformers. Crash somehow tries to stand out by doing nothing. Different aesthetics, sure, but no, this is super simple to the point of being annoying.
John is right. This game is super simple. However, I like it. When I was younger, I didn't really like this game. At most, maybe I got to the end of the first world, then gave up. Having started with Crash 3, then playing Crash 2, and then finally playing Crash 1, I wasn't impressed by it, especially compared to 2 and 3. Not only that, but it was a bit more challenging than the sequels. This is all without even mentioning the gems. We'll get into those in a bit, but for now, I can say that without going for the gems, you're literally just going from the beginning of the level to the end of the level. That's it. At the time of the game's release though, aside from alpha waves, it was one of the first games where the camera was behind the main character, unless of course you want to count Antarctic Adventure. This was groundbreaking. To people in the 90s, this was something else entirely. The game's simplistic nature will be super easy for newcomers to pick up and play, especially since all the players would have to learn is how to move, jump, and spin. That's it. Easy to learn, but the levels near the end will be challenging to newcomers.
All in all, I mean, when you start the game, it seems simple enough. The game in itself isn't really that difficult. It does spike, like maybe in the third or fourth world, maybe in the last one. But other than that, even the difficult levels aren't really that hard. You really just gotta know what you're doing, really. I mean, it's easy at first, but near the end, it gets pretty tricky and it gets tedious as hell.
I don't really find it difficult anymore unless I'm going for the 100% completion, but I've played this game a lot since the Insane Trilogy came out. Comparing it to the sequels though, the level aesthetics may bore you as they don't really venture out too much. I am a sucker for temple aesthetics though. Something that is also really cool is seeing Cortex's castle in the background at the beginning and seeing it get closer and closer as you progress towards the end of the game. That's just like Donkey Kong Country, seeing King K. Rool's ship get closer and closer as you progress.
As Carlos mentioned, this game pushed the PlayStation to its limits. The developers wanted to create huge levels bigger than what the PlayStation could handle in a single load time. Basically, the developers made use of the fixed camera. The only part of the level that is rendered is what the fixed camera sees. So any part of the level that isn't seen is not rendered, saving on load times and helping create bigger levels. And an example of this would be if you were to get an emulator and you played it in widescreen, you'll see like on the sides of the screen, you'll see what's not rendered, but you'll see everything the fixed camera is supposed to see. The developers opted to use more polygons and textures to help as well. This game was revolutionary at the time, and people were impressed with the gameplay, and not only that, they were impressed with the animation and graphics within the game.
This game was truly a technical marvel back when it was released, and I'd say it still looks decent by today's standards. The game really pushed the PS1 to its limits, and personally, I have lots of fun with this game, especially with seeing how fast I can beat the game in one sitting. Here's the thing, the moment you decide to go for 100% in this game, especially in the original, the game becomes a different beast entirely.
Do not even get me started on that.
But you got it easier though, since you're playing the remakes.
Let's talk about the original first, since that's the worst version when it comes to the gems. First of all, as you're playing the game, you're going to notice tons of boxes in the level. With how satisfying it is to break them, you may want to break all of them. If you complete a level while breaking every box in it, you are rewarded with a gem. Seems simple, right? Well, here's the thing. Some levels cannot be completed without already having collected a colored gem. Let's take the second level for example, Jungle Rollers. You're playing the game as normal and then you see this, a green gem that gets smaller as you get closer to it. There's nothing more you can do here, so when you complete the level, the game will tell you that you missed 3 boxes. If you get the green gem from another level, in this case it would be from the Lost City, then you can come back to Jungle Rollers and the green gem would create a platform that takes you to the rest of the boxes needed to collect the gem.
How do you get the colored gems, you ask? Simple. Go to the corresponding level and just break all the boxes. Here's the issue. First of all, nowhere in the game does it tell you which level gives you the colored gems. That means that unless you've memorized which level gives you gems, you are pretty much stuck trying to get the gems as you play, only to find out you need a colored gem. So okay, set it aside and come back later. But I hope you don't forget which level needs which colored gem, because again, the game will not tell you. Most of the levels at the beginning of the game cannot be completed on the first go. Most of the colored gems are in the later levels. Assuming you don't mind doing a bit of backtracking, then it shouldn't really be too bad, right?
If everything me and Richard just explained seemed like too much, you haven't even seen the worst of it. On top of everything we just went over, you cannot die when completing the levels to get the gems. This means that to get all the box gems, every level has to be played to perfection. If you die after hitting a checkpoint, the game will not even tell you how many boxes you missed, which means you now have to exit the level and try again. The game won't even show you the screen where it tells you how many boxes you missed.
That was my favorite thing about this game and they got rid of it? That's bullshit!
Trust me, so many deaths will be due to simple mistakes, which sucks when you die at the very end of the level and you have to restart it all over again. All this for an ending that's not even canon? Yeah, a lot of people are not going to want to play this game to completion, and to be honest, I would not blame them at all. This game needs a certain skill and patience to be fully completed. I can do it, but do I enjoy it? If we're talking about the original PS1 version, then no, not really. I have all the gem locations memorized, but because of the no death rule, that can lead to so much frustration. Also, getting the gems in the 2 hog levels can suck because if you miss a box, you gotta quit the level and start it from the beginning to start again since you can't turn the hog around.
My personal opinions on gem hunting: some levels can be straightforward, some can be relatively easy, some can be difficult as hell. Going back to what we stated earlier, there are some stages where you can't get the gray gems by itself. You have to go to another part of the level which you'll be able to access later on in certain worlds and whatnot. All in all, if you are a seasoned gamer, it's not really that hard. If you're new to a game like Crash, it's gonna be difficult and it's probably gonna discourage you a little bit, but you have to keep on going. There's nothing like having that feeling of 100% in a game. So even if you have to start at the very beginning of any level that you are playing, it would be worth it in the end, to say the least. With Crash 1 being as difficult as it is, getting 100%, it hurts, it's very painful. You'll probably be in the corner with spilt milk, crying. It'll still be worth it. It might get you to a point where it's like, hey, I might not even want to play this game again. Trust me, I can relate.
At the very least, the Insane Trilogy fixes this issue somewhat. Not only does the map screen tell you which gem you'll earn on each level, but on regular levels you can die as many times as you want and still get the box gem at the end. You still can't die on the color gem level though, so that issue is still apparent, but I'll take it any day over not being able to die on every level. It's a good trade-off for them fixing the regular levels. It still doesn't resolve the fact that you'll need to backtrack after you get the color gems though.
Fuck these gems. Are you fucking serious? This is bullshit. Not only can I not die to get these knockoff Chaos Emeralds,
Oh man, not the knockoff Chaos Emeralds.
but I also can't get the regular gems without the colored ones, which again, don't appear until the later levels. So you're telling me in order to 100% this game, I have to play levels I tried to get the gem in, but couldn't because of a colored fucking gem I didn't have? When I do try to get a colored gem, if I make a simple mistake at the end, I can't even get the stupid thing. Oh, fuck off. I didn't even bother with getting 100%. This game sucks. It may be simple, but fuck no. This is not for newcomers. To the idea that this was great back then, that's cool. But I'm looking at this game now, so why the hell would I care about the 90s camera when 3-year-olds of today know how to control a fucking camera? No, fuck these gems.
Jesus, it really isn't that difficult, not in the remakes anyway. Getting 100% is a breeze in the remaster, although I still struggle somewhat with 1 or 2 colored gems. The only thing about the Insane Trilogy that is way different is that it'll require all the boxes from the bonus rooms to be broken as well. Throughout the levels, some boxes will give you one of 3 tokens. It'll either be a Tana token, an Embryo token, or a Cortex token. If you collected 3 tokens of the same character, you'll go to a bonus stage. The Cortex ones are only in 2 levels, and they are used to get the 2 keys in the game, which unlock bonus levels. The Brio tokens just give a more difficult bonus stage. They don't really offer anything else aside from a bunch of extra lives, if you can even get to them. In the original, once you die, there is no chance to replay any of the bonus stages. In both versions, they do act like checkpoints though.
The Tana tokens are what you'll mostly see. The Tana bonus rounds are super simple, and at the end, usually you get some extra lives, and you'll see Tana just standing there. Doesn't make sense since I thought she was captured. At least in the Insane Trilogy, she gets kidnapped in every bonus round, so that kind of makes sense.
Jesus. Tana gives Princess Elise competition with how much she gets captured. Nah, scratch that. Even though Elise doesn't do much, she at least cared for the blue blur, unlike this fucking virgin who she leaves for the fucking gangster guy. Fucking loser.
There is no way in hell Crash is a virgin. This guy claps. This guy plows. Look at that freaking dance, for crying out loud. He's dying to get back to it. Again, Crash Bandicoot is a sex addict.
As Carlos was saying, in the original Crash 1, the boxes in these bonus rounds don't matter to the tally at the end of the levels, so you can essentially go through these without hitting a single box. In the remakes, those boxes count, so break all of them. In the original Tana bonus rooms, the game gives you the ability to see the password for that part of the game, or save your game. And that's another issue with the original Crash 1. The only time you can save your game or receive a password is either when you complete a bonus round or collect a gem.
Seeing as this game came out when the PlayStation was brand new, I can give this save system a pass, but only because of the password system. People who didn't have memory cards had an option for passwords, so that's pretty cool. You can also enter in the 100% password to get the final ending that way. It's cheating, but you can do that now. Either way, the save system is bad. Not as bad as a game like Blasto's save system, because in Crash 1, at least you have unlimited continues. When you load your game, you have to replay the level you saved at, but it refills your lives to 4. That sucks though, because if you had 99 lives and then you save, then load the game, you'll only load up with 4 lives. The remake thankfully fixes this issue with the autosave feature, making it pretty easy.
What are you talking about? This game is difficult for first timers especially. My first playthrough was on the Switch, mostly handheld mode. And Jesus Christ, I was struggling near the end. At first I thought it was the game being difficult. Then when Carlos bought me the game for my PC, I said, alright, round 2, bitch. Then I got bored. Carlos had told me that the bonus rooms give you lives, so I just kept getting them and saw another problem. Now the game is boring. I said this while playing. Giving me a bunch of lives for bullshit design doesn't make it good. While I think the game is challenging, most of the time the deaths felt cheap. Mind you, before you guys say, oh, it's just a skill issue, I fucking loved Cuphead and Celeste. 2 games that are known for being difficult, but come on. Those games did things to stand out from the rest of the crowd and were so much fun. This was boring. Yeah, it's hard, but once you see what to do, it feels so basic. Nothing stood out as unique. I don't care if it's the first game in the franchise. Sonic Adventure and Mario 64 were their first 3D games, and I think those games still hold up but have aged. But I didn't get bored playing those most of the time. In this game, my favorite part was seeing Crash get beat by boxes. Finally, approved animal abuse.
Alright. I can admit that some levels here are pretty challenging. For some reason, I get my butt kicked in Toxic Waste, and while many people have trouble with the bridge levels, personally, I had trouble with Slippery Climb. Not only is it one of the longest levels in the game, and not only are the platform challenges pretty tight, but this is a color gem level, meaning that even in the remake, you cannot die. The amount of simple mistakes that cost me the gem are too much to count sometimes. There was another level by the name of Stormy Ascent that was cut from the final release. It was way too hard. Thank God they cut that level because the Insane Trilogy added this level, and holy crap is this difficult.
When it comes to the difficulty, this game can be very, very hard, as some of the levels are unforgiving with the enemies, obstacles, traps. You might as well play the game without getting a mask. That's how hard this game is. But you want to know what wasn't hard? The bosses. Think of yourself playing a game like Mega Man. First time playing it, the bosses are going to be super, super difficult. You're not going to know what the hell you're doing. But as soon as you recognize the kind of patterns they give out, it becomes a walk in the park. Now with a game like Crash 1, you don't have to sit there and, oh, what am I doing? How do I do this? No, it's more simple than a game than Mega Man. It's very straightforward. You can breeze through the boss levels, without a mask.
The bosses here were pretty pathetic and super easy, not gonna lie. The only cool one was the final boss, but even then it's super easy. Pretty much all the bosses are so short that you'll end up beating them no problem and ask yourself, was that it? They may not be as pathetic as Spyro 1's bosses, but I mean, come on, these are way too easy.
These bosses are weird sometimes. It's not clear what to do, but once you figure it out, they are pathetically easy. But if you fuck up, you have to wait so long just to hit them again. Yeah, they suck.
Speaking of the bosses, this game had a scrap 2D intro and outro to it, and there you can see all of Cortex's creations that you'll fight. You see all the bosses there in 2D. I don't know about that song though.
Crash Bandicoot!
Sony told the developers that they wanted to push the 3D graphics that the PlayStation was capable of, so those cutscenes were scrapped and fully animated in 3D. They also added voice acting. Brendan O'Brien was cast to voice almost a whole cast of characters. He voices Neo Cortex, Nitrous Brio, and he even voices Crash Bandicoot himself.
Uh-oh!
The sound you hear the most is Crash's signature death sound.
Whoa!
Oh, you might hear that a whole bunch.
Whoa! 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 I just stepped in a big pile of sassy.
The Insane Trilogy completely reanimates every cutscene from the ground up. They also recast the characters' voice actors. Corey Burton voices Nitrous Brio and Lex Lang voices Neo Cortex. Jess Harneau voices Crash now with his own take on the death sound. Whoa! Like that? Is that how you do it?
Yeah. The new cast is great. What wasn't as great was the overall visual presentation of the remakes. I'll go over that later though, since I've got some things to say. But as I stated earlier, Crash 1 isn't too bad for me. Despite the difficulty of the original, I love the way it looks, although it plays a bit clunky compared to the sequels. I find the Insane Trilogy to be a bit harder when it comes to making jumps and landing on small platforms, although that might be my muscle memory of the original games messing with me. Once I got used to the Insane Trilogy's physics, it wasn't too bad though. Seeing the updated cutscenes was something that made me geek out when it first came out. And the graphics, holy crap, this game is beautiful. And if you play it on PC and get that smooth 60 frames per second, this game, along with the Spyro Reignited Trilogy, is one of the best looking cartoon games I've ever seen. This is the definitive way to play Crash 1. However, one of my biggest issues with the Insane Trilogy overall is the updated soundtrack. Josh Mansell composed the soundtrack for the original game. This is the same guy who did the music for the Jak and Daxter games. Crash 1 was already the weakest soundtrack of the trilogy, but it still had songs I relatively liked, such as Up the Creek, Temple Ruins, Toxic Waste, and Cortex's theme. I think the soundtrack of this game is super basic, simple, and atmospheric, making it the weakest soundtrack out of the original trilogy. It may even be too basic, but it isn't bad in my opinion. However, I don't like the updated soundtrack all too much. I mean, here are some comparisons. I prefer Josh Mansell's original soundtrack. What do you guys think of the soundtrack for Crash 1?
You mean the fucking background jungle noises? The best music in this game was the first level and the Aku Aku Invincibility theme. That's it, nothing stood out. except the Hog Wild music. That was cool.
The soundtrack in the original is okay. Everything the remake tried to do is they did too much. They didn't have to go all out, even with the animations, with how everyone moves, how smoothly everyone moves. Honestly, I think it makes the game a lot slower. Though I will say with Crash 1 in terms of the remake is a lot better than the original. I mean, for starting off, you can save whenever you want. You don't have to backtrack when you die trying to get gems and whatnot. The soundtrack, it's arguably better than the original. Just to sum it up, I would prefer, when it comes to Crash 1, I would prefer the insane version over the original any day.
Overall, the game is a lot of fun in my opinion. It established the foundation of the 2 games that are coming next. I can definitely recommend the first one, but I think if someone is going to play these games for the first time, start with Crash 3 and work your way down to Crash 1. Like John, the first game could possibly bore you with its oversimplistic design. If I were to recommend any Crash game to a newcomer to the series, it probably won't be this one, although I'd still recommend the remake of Crash 1 over the original any day.
This game sucks. Like, you will hear Carlos say, oh, it's the first game, it was getting the foundation, but that foundation was so basic, nothing stood out. The level aesthetics repeat, the music wasn't great, the backtracking for color gems was just there to pad out the game. I wasn't enjoying myself collecting them, and when I finally decided to just beat the levels, then it did slightly get better, but even then I noticed how basic the levels really were. Nothing really caught my attention. Mind you, in high school, I was told by a couple people that the Crash Trilogy were some of the best PlayStation games ever. So when I come in and find a basic game that doesn't do much to stand out, especially now, yeah, I'm very disappointed. And no matter how much Carlos says it's the first game, I won't be coming back to Crash 1, especially with all the hype I heard about.
To be fair, I'm in the minority when it comes to my opinions on Crash 1. I mean, most of my opinions are always in the minority, I'm not gonna lie. But lots of people simply brush off the first Crash game, either due to its simplicity or its apparent difficulty. I truly did have fun with Crash 1, whether I'm going for 100% or just going from beginning to end as fast as I can. Now before we move on to Crash 2, I want to talk about something. You guessed it, let's talk about Crash's Japanese design. As always, Japan always demands changes when localizing it for their audience. I mean, so do we, but with us it's different. Just like how Blasto had all those changes demanded and Spyro had its visual gameplay changes, Japan did not like how aggressive Crash looked. Because of that, Crash had to look cuter. I find it fascinating how they never liked their characters being aggressive. As for the differences in the game, firstly, Aku Aku gives instructions to the player on how to play the game. Also, a few color gems being switched around, which actually makes the preferred version for speedrunners. Also, the commercials featured the Crash mascot doing this specific dance, along with the catchy theme song that became the theme song for the Japanese Crash games going forward. The developers loved the dance so much that they incorporated it into Crash Bandicoot 2 and the rest of the games onward. It became his signature dance. Also, quick side note, the Japanese were offended with Tana's design, so Naughty Dog could not bring her back in later games. Because of that, Crash was given a sister named Coco, which we will see in the sequel.
1997 saw the release of Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back. This game's story is kind of weird. It starts immediately after Crash defeated Cortex in Crash 1. As Cortex crashes down into a dark cavern, he lights a match and notices a crystal. Cortex then gets an epiphany and 1 year goes by while he works on his master plan.
After a whole year, Cortex's new assistant and newcomer, Engine, tells Cortex that the crystal he found is a master crystal. However, they cannot harness its power without the 25 slave crystals that are scattered across the earth. Engine tells Cortex that it would be difficult finding the crystals without any more friends or operatives left to help. Cortex then realizes that if he doesn't have any friends to help, then he'd have to find an enemy that will help. Why he wouldn't trust Crash to help is beyond me.
Back on Earth, Crash and his sister Coco Bandicoot are chilling. Coco's laptop battery gets fried and she wakes Crash up, telling him to get another battery for her. I guess this place has a local electronics store, but whatever. Crash gets up to look for a battery, but almost immediately gets warped into a warp room. Cortex then projects himself and pretty much does FaceTime with Crash. Cortex tells Crash that he needs help collecting crystals. He explains to Crash that he has discovered a force that threatens to destroy the whole world. Cortex says that the crystals are the only way of saving it.
As Crash keeps seeing more holograms of Cortex, every now and then Coco hacks her way in to try to warn Crash about something. I wonder what she wants to warn him about. I also wonder, where did she get the battery? But the player knows exactly what's going on. I mean, the name of the game tells you. So I guess the whole point of this is to have some dramatic irony, I guess?
Along the way, Crash is also contacted by Nitrous Brio, Cortex's assistant from the first game. Brio tells Crash that if he really wants to save the world, that he must gather gems instead of crystals. When the hell did he turn into a good guy is never explained, but Brio threatens to stop Crash if he still collects crystals for Cortex. Because of this, Brio recruits most of the bosses you face in this game. He recruits Ripperoo, who has gotten a lot more intelligent since the last game, but still insane.
Hey boss, didn't you just graduate from university?
Yep,
So does that mean you're less insane now?
probably not.
Okay, moving on. Brio also recruits the Komodo brothers. These guys love to play with their scimitars, but to be fair, what brothers don't grow up throwing knives at each other?
What? And you think I'm insane?
Brio even recruits Tiny. No, not that Tiny, I'm talking about Tiny Tiger. Of course, Crash defeats them all, because how could creatures way tougher than Crash defeat him? It makes no sense, but it's the main character immunity, I guess.
After Crash collects the 20th crystal, Cortex sends in Jin to collect them before Crash goes to find the remaining 5 crystals. Crash meets up with Jin and... Jesus! Crash blows him up! Damn! After collecting the last crystal, Coco reveals to Crash that Cortex's plan wasn't to save the world, but to harness the power of the crystals to power his all-new and updated Cortex Vortex to turn everyone on Earth into his mindless slaves. Crash goes to outer space, and Cortex is seen fleeing the scene with the Master Crystal. Crash manages to catch up to him and kicks his ass. Cortex has been defeated, and the world has been saved.
Back on Earth, Coco and Crash are seen chilling once again, but wondering what happened to the Cortex Vortex. After collecting all of the gems, however, Brio uses their power for the laser beam that destroys the Cortex Vortex. The world has truly been saved now. The game ends here, but if you're playing the remakes, a piece of the Cortex Vortex is seen falling down to Earth, foreshadowing the events of the third game, thus ending the story of Crash Bandicoot 2.
This game's story is a bit more complex than the previous story. It's alright, still super simple. I am just wondering why Brio turns good. Also, the fact that we know that Cortex is evil, yet Crash and Coco don't, is a bit weird to me. It's a minor complaint, but yeah, this story is pretty alright. The name of the game is still the gameplay, but having the holograms talk to Crash is pretty cool. I wish the holograms of the bosses talk to you too, though, but Crash 3 does that, so that's cool.
Overall, the story wasn't that bad. If anything, it's a little bit better than the first one, even with the Insane Trilogy making sense with some of the things like with Tana being kidnapped and whatnot. It also makes sense with Crash's character. He's this confused, clumsy, humanoid animal thing. Of course, he's gonna be naive when it comes to Cortex, he's easily manipulated, honestly.
Bro, not gonna lie, I didn't even remember all the details until reading our script. It wasn't a bad story by any means, but nothing thought-provoking. At most, it was your typical bad guys lying, go get the stuff, now good guy says get other thing to save the world, and now we are done. Besides, this is a video game after all. Let's go over the gameplay now, and let's see if this is an improvement or if it follows the same trend as the last game.
Crash 2 has all of the same mechanics and controls from the first game, with some new additions. First and foremost, Crash has a new ability. It is simple, yet effective. If you hold the circle button, Crash will crouch. If you move while holding this, he can crawl around. Kinda boring, kind of slow, but if you jump while crouched, you get a bit of a higher jump. That's cool, but meh. If you press circle in the air, you can belly flop. Cool, I guess, but if you press circle while running, you get to do a slide. And if you jump as you slide, you can get some serious speed and air time. This is awesome and so much fun. The cherry on top of this is that if you slide and press the spin button and jump button at the same time, Crash will do a super jump. This can make the game a whole lot more fun as well.
The new abilities that they added in the game makes Crash less stiff. You can have more fun with him. You can jump around, you can smash into things different kind of ways. However, there's one trick that a lot of speedrunners know about this in Crash 2. I don't think you could do it in Insane Trilogy. I know in the original you can. If you're holding, like you're running, and then you press the circle button to slide. In the middle of sliding, you let go of circle, and you're still holding up, and press the square button. But as soon as you press the square button to spin, let go of the analog stick or the D-pad, and he should not run, but he's going way faster.
I love these new abilities. I'm a little sad that the run feature is after you beat the game, but man, the slide jump was awesome, and even the slide being slightly faster was cool for me. But by combining a spin with the slide jump, oh my gosh, this did something for me because I felt like I could do more things. I had more options and could get somewhat creative within the levels, and I would be rewarded for that, even if it was as small as avoiding enemies. I loved these new abilities.
New abilities aside, the name of the game here is to collect the crystals and exit the level. The crystals aren't hidden very well. In fact, they are in plain sight, so it is still relatively the same as Crash 1. On a side note, if you beat the first level and don't collect the crystal, or exit the level, in the warp room, Cortex will yell at you. You can do this up to 3 times, or he'll literally talk to the player as if they're stupid.
Look above the doorways. Above each, there is a big crystal-shaped slot. Fill all 5 crystal slots in this warp room by retrieving 1 crystal from each of the 5 areas.
It's a cool little Easter egg the game has if you ignore what Cortex tells you.
Speaking of the warp room, Crash 2 is vastly different than Crash 1 when it comes to selecting the level you're going to play. In Crash 1, you had to play the levels in the order intended. Here, you are put in a warp room, and each room has 5 levels in it. You're free to choose which level you want to play first. You can play them in any order you want. Also, each level tells you exactly how many gems there are in the level, and it tells you if it has a colored gem, which helps out a lot since the original Crash 1 didn't tell you anything. After completing the 5 levels and getting all the crystals, you can fight the boss and ride the platform in the middle of the hub to the next tier or the warp room. Again, in the remake, after defeating the first boss, you can play as Coco in almost every level. There's not really much of a difference with Coco in the game. She plays the exact same way. I will say though, she does play a hell of a lot better than in those few stages you have in Crash the Wrath of Cortex.
Playing as Coco is mostly just cosmetic, but she's adorable and she's really cool. She's really smart too. I play as Coco a whole bunch. She's a great contrast to her big brother.
Oh, I think she is better than Crash. Coco actually has a personality. Not shown much, but I mean it's there. To me, Crash being dumb isn't a personality, to be honest. Like, it just feels lazy, but I can't really explain it. I like Coco. I feel that in the cutscenes and even her waiting animation, she has more than her brother. So I played as Coco most of the game. She also doesn't pull gems out of her ass. Gross.
New to Crash 2 are Nitro boxes. Think TNT boxes, but you can't even touch these. If you do, they explode. They also kind of jump around since they're probably so radioactive. It isn't too bad here, but in the remake, they can really bounce high and mess you up. Also, there are these steel crates that can only be broken by the belly flop. They're kind of pace breaking, to be honest.
In Crash 2, the level types are pretty interesting. You still have the classic jungle and ruin themes, but now there is a snow theme and space theme. There are still boulder chasing levels and animal riding levels. This time, Crash rides a cute little bear named Polar. Look at him, he's adorable. It would be a shame if he got abused and you were rewarded with extra lives.
Monster!
What? But you said abusing Crash was okay. Well, there's also a level where a huge polar bear chases you and even mixes that level with the polar riding level. Pretty cool. This game also brings back the levels in the dark, but they are better here since you can get hit and still keep the light. Also, this game has a jetpack, but compared to Blasto, I'd say this jetpack isn't as good. I still enjoy the levels here though, but again, I think Blasto handled the jetpack way better. The water levels here have a jet ski for Crash to ride. It still plays the same though, you're still going forward collecting boxes, but you can boost with the jet ski. Pretty cool, especially for speedrunning to get the hidden gems. Which brings us into our next talking point, the gems. They're back with a vengeance in this game.
This game has way more gems than the first one did. In the first game, each level has 1 gem. Here, each level can have up to 2 gems. Damn, I didn't even realize that there was this many.
The gems here can range from easy to outright cryptic. This time, the clear gems can be collected even if you die in the level. Thank God. But with that, the game expects you to be more experimental to get the colored gems. What do I mean by that? Well, The majority of the colored gems here are hidden behind some sort of secret. Some of them can be obvious if you have an eye for it, and some of them can be super cryptic. The blue gem is in the first level. You can look for it all over the stage, but you won't be able to find it. If you've already collected the clear gem and make it to the end, the box counter will show you how many boxes you've broken out of 0. Get it? That's right. That means you have to beat the whole level without breaking one box, and the blue gem will be your reward at the end.
I found that out reading a cheat code book long ago. I didn't get that subtle hint at the end of the level. The red gem is in the second level. You can see it right there. You can't quite reach it. Now in the original, you can use that spin slide jump we mentioned earlier and belly flop to get to it, but that's tricky, and that's more of an exploit. The proper way of getting it is super cryptic. How was I supposed to know that I had to enter a specific level and jump off of those boxes to reach this specific platform that takes me to a secret warp room? Well, that secret warp room has a few secret entrances to levels. This specific entrance takes you to Snowgo, and when completed it drops you right on top of the red gem. That's very cryptic. I'd say that could be the most cryptic one in this game. Eel Deal has a secret wall, which I guess is obvious with all these nitros blocking the path according to John. The most obvious one was here. In Behaving, these nitros form some sort of stairs. If you watch them, the boxes don't bounce. They're fake. You can jump on them and it takes you to the purple gem. That one is creative. And back to what Faltor said, because you're able to die within the levels, the game encourages you to experiment more in hopes of finding these secrets. Secrets aren't just limited to the color gems. Even with this, some can be super cryptic. And being someone who loves Blasto despite its cryptic nature, sometimes I can't defend cryptic things when they're required. I just personally don't mind it myself.
In the remakes, there are loading screens before each level that can give you hints, and those hints are what really helped me to find all those secrets. The red gem and 2 of the warps to level secrets are bullshit though, but the majority of the secrets I was able to find myself using these hints, making it easier for people to find the secrets.
The colored gems will still be required to unlock these specific colored gem platforms to help you get 100%, and that's the same as Crash 1. New to this game, however, are the death platforms, or death roads. On occasion, you'll either see an outline of a platform or a platform that has a skull and crossbones on it. If you see the outline, then you must try to level again and reach this point without dying. As soon as you ride this platform, you can die as many times as you want though. But these platforms often take you to a short but challenging part of the level, which rewards you with a gem. Usually these are lots of fun, but once you see the routes that has boxes,
I have a question for God. Why?
The death routes aren't too bad because once you ride it and die, they won't disappear. It doesn't happen too often, but when the death routes have boxes, or heck, when there's a fork in the road in the level, it means that you'll have to go forward through one path and backtrack through the other. Now, on the levels like the boulder chase levels, the camera does a good job at having a good position to give you a good view on what's coming ahead. On regular levels though, if the perspective is in 3D, then you're gonna struggle going backwards through a route. Or at least I do anyway, especially in digging it. Those damn bees are so hard to see and anticipate that I'm always getting stung by them.
You like jazz?
You know, I get it. Bees literally keep the world healthy, but damn, why do video games always make me hate bees? The backtracking kind of sucks, but again, I will stress that it's only in 1 or 2 levels. Digging it and Cold Hard Crash. I don't know, what do you guys think of all this backtracking?
backtracking the levels can be fun, they can be time consuming, or they can just be outright fucking horrible.
I actually don't think this is too bad. To be honest, it can suck backtracking, but typically it wasn't too bad. If you take it slow, going back in levels is fine. What I hate is when a game makes me artificially backtrack like in Crash 1, where I can't get 100% because the color gem I need is way later. Here, I can get every gem without having to go back to the first world. I like that.
Cold Hard Crash is bullcrap. Not only does this have a death route, but at the end of the route, there's a gem you have to collect and then go kill yourself to try the death route again since it has boxes. So you have to complete the death route once to get the gem, then you have to get to the end, breaking all the boxes, then go back through the whole route to get back to the death platform and ride it back down to where you were in the level, all with ice physics. I really hate this level. They did it on purpose, I swear. At least the death animations keep me from getting too angry.
You seem pretty angry considering you're calm most of the time. But yeah, the death animations here are hilarious. The one you'll be seeing is the one where Crash turns into an angel. There's also one that was so brutal. God damn, that was brutal. You'll also see Crash's shoes fly out when you fall into a bottomless pit. And it wasn't so bottomless, was it?
If you hit a TNT, you'll see Crash pretty much explode, leaving behind his shoes, eyeballs, and nose. If you hit a Nitro, Crash will turn into an angel playing a didgeridoo. What the hell is that? The bees make Crash swell up, and lots of death animations will show that Crash wears pink underwear. There are so many more death animations here, but they kept me from raging too hard, so I'm glad they were here. Not that this game is even that hard aside from those few levels I mentioned. That's just me though. What do you guys think about the difficulty here?
I think Crash 2 is perfectly balanced in difficulty. Besides Cold Hard Crash, I didn't feel like anything was too hard or too easy. To me, this was fun because not only was it challenging enough to actually be worthwhile, but it also was not cheap. If I died, it felt more like my fault than anything.
The difficulty here is a little more forgiving than the first Crash game. However, I found myself in areas where I would have to force myself to fucking die. But that's rare, that's rare. At least with dying on here, at least with the difficulty, at least with all the bullshit that happens, you won't have to backtrack. I'm sorry, I really hate Crash 1. I'm so sorry. No, I'm not sorry!
Overall, this game is such an improvement over the first one. It's better in almost every way. Heck, even the music here is way better. They focus less on making it atmospheric with sound effects and focus more on making a proper video game soundtrack. The songs here are pretty good, but again, I feel like it wasn't as good in the remaster sadly. Prime example is the bear riding music and the boulder chase music. Have a listen. The bear riding music in the old one was made with the sounds the bear would make. But in the new one, it seems more sci-fi or something. Meh. The boulder music in the original just gets me so damn nervous, and I don't feel that with the remakes. Again, meh. I'm curious, what do you guys think?
I feel like Crash 2 didn't have memorable music, but I like some of them while playing it. But for the life of me, I can't recall anything.
You know, the soundtrack in this game, it makes me want to take my clothes off. Crash, bend over. Now, what the fuck am I saying, bro? Why the fuck would I?
Music aside, this is a game I actually got 100% on, since the actual backtracking of Crash 2 was almost non-existent, and with the new abilities I had, it felt fun figuring out how to get the gems, and since just playing the game I was able to get a lot of them, it was fun to do, and I got all the gems and saw the true ending.
I never really cared of getting 100% on any of the Crash games, although it does kind of make me feel some kind of way when I beat the game without getting 100%. And, you know, with these Crash games, they're notorious for having two different endings. So the only game that I've ever tried to 100% was Crash Wrath of Cortex. Other than that, I would really just look up the endings because it's too much for me. It's too much for me. The getting 100% is too fucking much for me.
Yeah, this game is definitely my favorite one out of the trilogy to get 100% on. It flows really well, the length of the game is just right, and overall, it's a whole bunch of fun. I love this game so much. Definitely the best one out of the trilogy. I'm not sure why the jetpack was used in the title screen if it didn't have too much use. Again, I like the jetpack levels here. They are pretty fun, but I still prefer the jetpack gameplay in Blasto since it allows for a bit more exploration. Do you guys like the jetpack?
No, why does this exist? Personally, I don't like this thing. It moves weird and it takes forever to get all the boxes in these levels, and trying to be precise is a nightmare. Yeah, this sucks.
Getting a jetpack in the game is pretty cool, but it makes me, I'm just gonna be honest, it makes me want to go back to Blasto. You know, seeing him with all his muscles, flexing his abs, washboard abs. Something else cool in this game is the new voice of Cortex. Clancy Brown voices him in this game, and they could not have chosen a better voice actor for him.
I agree, the voice of Mr. Krabs himself. He voices Cortex in this game and Crash 3, and this guy's voice is legendary. He has his calmer side, but when he's angry, you can hear Clancy Brown's signature raspiness in his voice. Again, Lex Lang in the remaster was still a great choice, and I am glad he's still the current voice of Cortex to this day, but Clancy Brown will always be the best Cortex when it comes to the more serious side of the character. With all that being said, this is definitely my favorite game in the trilogy. So many good memories back then, and so many memories I'm still making with this game. Overall, I can definitely recommend this game to anyone looking to get into this series. It's a better starting point than Crash 1 will ever be, that's for sure. The save system in Crash 2 was also improved. This time, just walk up to the save point in the warp room and it saves everything. Lives, progression, everything. This is great, I love Crash Bandicoot 2.
This may be a surprise, it was a surprise to Carlos, but I actually really liked Crash 2. Backtracking was almost non-existent, the levels were designed well, the journey across the game was fun. It surprised me because I did not like Crash 1, and Carlos thought I wouldn't like 2 and 3. But the backtracking was non-existent, and being able to experiment with the new abilities and get creative was fun. Even 100%ing it was fun, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, I like this. Crash 2 was fun.
Crash 2 overall was a good game. It's not a terrible game. It is not a terrible game. But considering the trilogy, the original trilogy, you go from Crash 1 to Crash 2, and it's like a climb to the apex of a masterpiece. So you guys, you know what time it is. It's time to move on to that apex. It's time to move on to my favorite game in the trilogy.
Immediately after destroying the Cortex Vortex with the laser beam, a part of the vortex crash lands on Earth, destroying a temple. After the impact, you see some sort of spirit leave the crash site and you hear this voice.
Free at last.
Back at the Bandicoot household, Crash and the gang are spooked by some sort of evil laugh. Aku Aku knows this laugh, and for the first time in the series, he talks. Mel Winkler plays him in this game. He nails this performance. Rest in peace. Aku Aku knows that Uka Uka has been freed. Uka Uka is Aku Aku's evil twin brother.
Uka Uka meets Neo Cortex at the Time Twister, and he scolds Cortex for failing to collect the crystals and gems in the last game. Cortex blames it on Crash, and Uka Uka says there were simple instructions to follow, and that there isn't any other power source left on the planet. Notice the shadowy figure in the background, because Cortex's mistake just so happened to set Uka Uka free. Uka Uka says he's feeling generous and spares Cortex's life. That shadowy figure comes closer and it is revealed to be Dr. Nefarious Trophy. This guy is the master of time and the creator of the Time Twister.
Jesus, what a freaking loser.
The villain's plan in this game is to use the Time Twister to go back in time to collect all 25 of the crystals from their original points in time. Back in the Bandicoot residence, Aku Aku explains that long ago he locked his evil brother in prison to protect the world. Crash, Coco, Aku Aku, and newcomer Pura the Tiger leave the house and head to the Time Twister. I thought that was the bad guys'.
Man, I'm telling you, Entropy is a loser. He built this Time Twister and just leaves it there for the good guys to have access to and use it for their own good? And where are Cortex and Uka Uka? Are they just sitting back and chilling while the heroes are collecting the crystals? What kind of villains are these?
They're evil villains, terrible plans and all.
I don't know, Carlos, that Entropy guy's giving you some competition here with the time abilities and all.
Whatever, dude. Whatever. But from here, Crash and Coco go to different points in time to collect the 25 crystals. These points in time can range from medieval times, prehistoric times, Arabian times, and even ride Pura the Tiger on the Great Wall of China. Heck, Crash and Coco can even go to the battles of World War I.
I am pretty sure Coco is helping the Allies, and Crash, well, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I doubt he cares who he's shooting.
You can even go to the times of ancient Egypt and even to the future at some point. Along the way, Crash and Coco will get some of the villains using the time twister to communicate. Usually, they tell Crash and Coco to give up. Obviously, they aren't going to listen, so that means it's time to fight some bosses.
Tiny makes his return in this game. No, Carlos, not that Tiny. He gets his butt kicked in the Roman Colosseum. The cutscene after you beat him is a bit concerning though.
Tiny was a good fellow. He hated everyone and everything, but a good heart nonetheless.
Does that mean he freaking dies? Jeez. You also fight a newcomer to the series, Dingodile, which is an Australian dingo mixed with a crocodile.
The next boss the duo faces Entropy himself. Once defeated, Cortex and Uka Uka warned Crash and Coco that without Entropy's constant care and attention, the time twister would act up and who knows what it could do. But nothing happens. In the next world, Engine makes his return, but this time Coco steps up and defeats him while flying. This leads us to the final world. Here, Crash fights Neo Cortex while Aku Aku fights Uka Uka. Once defeated, Cortex mentions he wants to retire.
Maybe I should retire to a nice big beach with a nice big drink and a woman with nice big bags of ice for my head.
Damn, Cortex wants titties. God, same here. Uka Uka mentions that our heroes didn't collect the gems, so they still have a chance to triumph in the end. Honestly, it's obvious that this is the bad ending, which means that the canon ending is the 100% ending, which honestly, why do that? If I don't want to 100%, why make it clear that it doesn't count? Like, why?
While it does suck that the bad ending doesn't satisfy, that personally gives me that motivation to go back and collect everything to defeat these two guys. Once you come back and defeat them after getting 100%, the time twister actually implodes on itself, and this huge time portal opens up and sucks the enemies in. Crash, Coco, and Aku Aku escape and make it home.
Cortex, Entropy, and Uka Uka are warped into the prehistoric past. Not only that, but Cortex and Tropy are babies now for some reason. From here, you hear Aku Aku say that we won't be seeing these enemies for a long time. The game ends with the two baby villains playing tug of war with Uka Uka. From here, it'll be 22 years before the babies grow up and start the events of Crash 4. Which just begs the question, how old are Crash, Coco, and Aku Aku? Overall, the story's a little bit more tangible than Crash 2. You know, it gives depth into the characters, especially Crash, given that he's a character that just runs around, crashing into things, no pun intended, and doesn't really talk as much.
It's fine, I guess. Gets the job done. Gives me my goal, so alright, let's do it. But I just hate that it's so clear that any percent ending isn't the real ending.
Once again, this story is bare bones and basic. It's a bit more complex than the previous two stories, but not by much. Either way, it introduces Uka Uka, and I think he's a really cool character, mostly because of his voice. Clancy Brown voices him in the original version, and wow, does he do such a kick-ass performance here. He makes Uka Uka scary, intimidating, and overall mysterious. It makes me want to know more about the backstory on the two masks. It's also pretty amusing to hear the same voice actor play both Cortex and Uka Uka, especially in the title screen for the game.
Crash Bandicoot War!
The gameplay here is pretty much the same as Crash 2. The name of the game here is collecting crystals, but in different time periods. Because of that, you'll even see enemies from their own respective time periods, which is awesome. You can fight mummies, knights, animals, and they are all made in a factory by Cortex. It's up to Crash and Coco to save the day. In the remasters, Coco is playable right from the start. This is where we learned that she was using the Time Twister machine to travel back to the first two games to help Crash, so it's pretty cool that we get an explanation as to how she is in all the games in the remasters. She, like Crash, plays exactly the same as they did in the previous game. However, there are a few new gameplay styles here.
The standard on-foot levels make a return here, playing the same as they did in the previous game along with the chase levels. This time you run from a dinosaur. Also, the animal riding levels return. This time Coco rides Purah the tiger on the Great Wall of China. You start seeing the new gameplay styles when you see Crash swimming underwater. Here, the gameplay is more like a 2D side-scroller. You can still spin, but this movement is much slower as you're underwater. You can also ride this, whatever this is, and shoot the enemies in coral.
There are also jet ski levels in this game. Basically, ride the jet ski, avoid the pirates, bombs, and cannonballs, and get to the end. The next level type is the motorcycle. Here you actually have to win a race in order to get the crystal, first place, or you lose. The last level type are the plane levels. Here you can shoot down blimps and planes. This game also introduces power-ups.
The first power-up is a super body slam. It's literally the regular body slam, but with added distance to the attacks. The double jump is also added, and it is awesome. Not as awesome as using it with the Death Tornado spin. Spam that square button and you can spin around and around. When you do it after a slide double jump, you can essentially glide. The next power up is the Fruit Bazooka, or you could call it the Fruit Zooka. Let me stop. You can shoot enemies with this to clear your path. The last power up is the Dash. This is used to speed run like a champ.
I love that they added these new power-ups. It feels like an extension of Crash's and Coco's abilities. I do think the game doesn't fully use them to the fullest sometimes, but they are power-ups and I like them. The double jump was a bit picky to use for some reason.
The different gameplay styles here are pretty cool, especially in the original version. I don't know what they did to that jet ski, but man, I don't think it plays as well as the original one did. I particularly enjoy all the level types. The swimming levels though are meh, because of how slow they can be at times. It's more of a nitpick though, as I don't mind them all too much. There's only 2 of them. Overall, I would have preferred more of the traditional levels, but overall I don't mind the gameplay styles here. And the power-ups, what a fun addition to the game. The slide jump mixed with the Death Tornado spin makes it a blast to take lots of shortcuts. This will prove useful when going for 100%.
Colored gems and death routes return here. They work exactly the same way as they do in Crash 2. This time, the majority of the death routes have a colored gem at the end of the path. There are way less cryptid secrets in this game though.
The secrets in this game are literally limited to 2 of them. They both take you to secret levels where you can get some gems and the new collectible. The relics, after beating the game and getting the running shoes, you can go back to previous levels and grab the clock and race to the finish in the quickest time possible. Along the way, you'll see yellow boxes with either the number 1, 2, or 3. Whatever number is on the box you break, the timer will stop for that amount of seconds. Depending on the time you get at the end, you will either be rewarded with a sapphire, gold, or platinum relic.
After you collect 5 relics, this secret platform will appear in the middle of the warp room. For every 5 relics you get, you'll unlock a new level. Some of these are brand new levels, and some of them are secret entrances to previous levels, one of which leads you to the yellow gem. On one hand, the relics make it so you don't have to look for secrets. On the other hand, however, backtracking to every level is pretty much mandatory if you want to get 100%. I do want to say that because the levels were designed with the relics in mind, the speedrun tactics with the new power-ups can be a really fun time, and it won't take you too long to start collecting relics. You definitely will start to feel burned out, and will need a break sooner or later though.
Which is what happened to me. I did not get many relics, and while speedrunning was fun, the fact you have to do it in one go kinda sucked, because when I'm speedrunning, it leads me to do more risky behavior, leading to more deaths. To tell you the truth, the levels are not designed to be explored, but go fast. In a game that isn't focused on it, yeah, I think that is a misstep, and with how many different gameplay levels there are this time, I feel these levels did not reach the same quality as Crash 2.
Getting the relics isn't really that difficult as long as you know what you were doing. However, as someone who has played Crash 3 practically my whole life, I would recommend beating the game first and collecting all the power-ups, especially the dash ability. You want to get gold. It's okay if you get blue, but I'd rather Carlos here explain what happens when you get at least the gold relics.
If you get all the gold relics, you get 105% completion and a fireworks show in the warp room. Pretty cool. Getting all the platinum relics is something I can never do though. You pretty much need to know this game inside and out to get these. The insane version of Crash 3 adds an extra level too. This time it's an original level that Vicarious Visions made themselves. Future Tense is a level made with all of the power-ups in mind. If you play this level, be sure to have all the power-ups unlocked, because this level is tough. Honestly, I wish the standard levels had level design like this, because this level is challenging, and since you have all of the power-ups, you can get creative with how you approach this level. Unlike the levels in Crash 1, this level is challenging while not being as simple as Crash 1 was. This is a pretty good first look at what was to come in Crash Bandicoot's future. And considering this was free DLC, yeah, this level is great. This was the only DLC along with the Stormy Ascent from Crash 1, but a good one. What also was great was the music in this game. I love this soundtrack. What do you guys think?
There's music?
The music in this game is okay. The only thing I will say, first and foremost, is when you go to the bonus stages in this game, it sounds like a rehash of the main menu theme of this game, which isn't a bad thing, but it seems to me personally that Crash 2 did it just a little bit better. But in terms of all the other stages, I mean, it's kind of a one-up from Crash 2 by a long shot.
To me, this is probably the best soundtrack out of the original trilogy. Because of the different time periods, Josh Mansell was able to compose music that fits with its respective place in time. The medieval music makes it really feel like medieval times. The dinosaur music makes it sound like the music was played using bones as instruments. The Arabian and Egypt music were amazing too. I also really love the motorcycle music, and I especially love the death route / gem route music. Depending on what level you take a death route or gem route in, the song will be using different instruments, but that melody is so freaking awesome. And do I even have to mention the Dingle Dial music or the final boss music? Or what about the brand new theme song and Warp Zone music? Yeah, this soundtrack rocks. I'm just disappointed in the Insane Trilogy soundtrack. As you can tell by now, I love the original soundtracks way more than the remastered soundtracks. It really sucks that you can't switch the music to the original uncompressed soundtrack like how you were able to do in Spyro's remasters.
Overall, I'm actually disappointed with Crash 3. With all the power-ups this game has, it should have let me get creative, but it didn't. There was way too many gameplay styles that I didn't like. The swimming, the jet ski levels, backtracking was back, which I didn't like in Crash 1, and overall the levels weren't as good as Crash 2. It's sad because thinking about it, Crash 3 should have surpassed it, but its execution left me wanting more. Maybe I was burned out, but I didn't 100% it, and honestly I was left disappointed because I felt like I should have liked this game a lot but didn't, and was even wishing for more.
Nah, man. Crash 3 is the top dog out of the trilogy. If I could say myself, Crash 3 is one of the best platforming games I've ever played. It has so much replay value to it. As far as 100%ing it though, I will have to agree with you. I mean, you can look it up online nowadays and see the true ending to it, but you know, just to play it for fun, beating the game through without getting 100% is just as satisfying as if you did 100% it, or in this case 105% it.
I love Crash 3. It isn't as good as the second game, but wow, I really do love this game. I feel like the levels are more varied. There are power-ups. I can shoot chickens. It is the easiest in the trilogy though, and for that reason I always recommend Crash 3 to be the first game any newcomer to the series plays. Yeah, it could get a bit challenging at times, especially when going for the gems and relics, but if you play it without going for 100%, the game will be over before you know it. Just don't get killed by these double headers. This game will always have a special place in my heart. Although Crash 2 is much better, this is one of those comfort games that I have, just like Blasto. And playing the remastered version rocks. Look at these visuals. Wow, I just wish the music was better here in the remaster. The remastered music is so underwhelming that I actually installed a mod to replace all the music with the original music. Yeah, I think it's that meh. Not bad, but meh. And you know what? That goes for the presentation as a whole for the remasters.
Here we go. Seeing as you liked Spyro's presentation better on PS1, I imagine it's the same here, right?
Abso-freaking-lutely. It isn't too bad in Crash 1 or Crash 2. I'd still prefer the original presentation over this. I mean, in the originals, when Coco hacks Cortex's projection signal, it's convincing.
Is he stealing our signal?
Crash! Cortex isn't going to use the crystals to contain the planet's energy.
In the remaster, I don't know, it just feels kind of cheap.
Is he stealing our signal?
Crash, Cortex isn't going to use the crystals to contain the planet's energy.
Crash 3 is on a whole other level. I mean, it's bad enough that Clancy Brown didn't reprise his role as Uka Uka. John DiMaggio didn't do a bad job at all, by the way. It mostly falls on the presentation. First of all, the cutscene in the original was super dark and super mysterious. You could barely see Uka Uka, and Clancy Brown's voice performance as Uka Uka took it to a whole new level.
But you lost the gems, you lost the crystals, and I have lost my patience!
Here in the remaster, although I think Lex Lang as Cortex and John DiMaggio as Uka Uka were great choices, the look of this cutscene just doesn't have that same feeling. Take a look.
But you lost
lost the gems, you lost the crystals, and I have lost my patience.
Also, in the remaster, rather than being in the background and walking in from the darkness, Entropy just appears from a portal. Again, it feels cheap. Speaking of a cutscene that feels cheap, watch this comparison.
Now you're on my time, you little skunk! Give me the crystals! Now you're on my time, you little skunk! Give me the crystals!
Again, I don't like how the remaster handled some of these cutscenes. At this point, it's very minor since the Insane Trilogy is the definitive way to play, but they definitely could have done better to replicate the original Crash Warped cutscenes. The voice cast did great though. Greg Eagles plays Aku Aku in the remaster, and he is the perfect Aku Aku. He is such a great replacement to Mel Winkler, and I am glad that Greg Eagles has been here to stay since the Crash of the Titans era.
Hey, Carlos. Hey, John and Faltor. I hope I'm saying that right. This is Greg Eagles. Thanks for the request. And about Aku Aku or Aku Aku, however you want to pronounce it. It was a lot of fun to play this character. Particularly because it was in my normal register. I didn't have to really alter my voice or strain my voice to work him. And I love the game, as I'm sure you are big fans as well. Even though I don't play the game, I know it's very, very popular. And it's one of my longest running gigs, so it was really a fun project to be a part of. When I started the game, I had no idea what the game was about. I wasn't familiar with the game. I'm not a gamer. So the fact that it has lasted well over 20 years is absolutely amazing and a testimony to how great the game is. Now, ironically, I was not the original actor in the voice of Aku Aku. It was a guy named Mel Winkler, I think, and he is since deceased. Rest in peace. So after he died, I guess they were interviewing a lot of other actors, and I wound up getting the gig. So I was very fortunate. So as Aku Aku, I'm giving a shout out to all the saints, the saint of music, and the leader of the saints and the saints of time. I guess that's what you wanted. Hope that works. But anyway, yeah, it was a fun gig, and it remains the highlight of my career. And in the recent iteration, they wanted my voice, but I didn't get to go into the booth, which I'm kind of like, a little on the fence about. But hey, at least that's my voice in the latest version of the game. They want to use stuff that I had already recorded, which I guess is fairly common now with games. Well, such is life. Anyway, can't complain. It was a great gig. Continue to enjoy the game, guys. All the best to all of you.
Wow, I already mentioned how perfect Lex Lang is as Cortex as well. At this point, when I think of Cortex's voice, I think of Lex Lang's Cortex. He is great. Overall, what do you guys think of the original trilogy?
Overall, the trilogy in itself was really just a trial and error, starting with Crash 1. Which, that being said, I don't really consider this a trilogy whenever I think about Crash, because when I think of Crash, I think of Crash 2. Crash 1 is that lost brother of the trio, if that makes sense. I wouldn't really play that as much as I would play Crash 2 or 3, but I will say I'd rather play Crash 1 than those other two games, Crash of the Titans and Mind Over Mutant.
The Crash Trilogy was not as good as everyone said. Crash 1 was the worst in the trilogy, making me worry I wouldn't like the rest. Crash 3 was a game that, idea-wise, should have been my favorite, but basic levels and too many gameplay shifts with forced backtracking again, yeah, I was disappointed. But Crash 2 was a surprise because I did like it and even wanted to 100% it. It's the best pace, best design, and even though it has less power-ups, I felt I could get more creative here than in Crash 3. The trilogy as a whole is a mixed bag, but Crash 2 was the one part I can see myself playing again. I didn't grow up with these games, so playing them now, I can't see the same things other people see. I look at it now, and what I see is not as great as people who grew up with it. To be honest, if you get the remaster trilogy, it's usually $40, but even then, I think you should get it on sale since I think only Crash 2 was really the best one. To get a remastered game for only one game, that doesn't even make sense. But it was fun. Crash 2 is fun, and Crash 3 is fine. I just wish it did a little more. Fuck Crash 1 though.
As someone who did grow up with these games since the PS1 days, I can say that I love all three of these games. Although I don't like them as much as I do Blasto or the Spyro trilogy, these come pretty darn close. Crash 1 is the weakest of the trilogy to be sure, although I like it. As I said earlier, I am in the minority with that opinion. This game is often skipped to go straight to Crash 2, which is so freaking good. Crash 3 is great as well. I just love this trilogy. I am so happy I grew up with these games. I am so happy I followed this series, and I am so thankful to the developers and the voice actors who contributed to making these games a reality. Thank you Naughty Dog for creating the trilogy, and thank you Activision for reviving the franchise you stopped caring for. I extend my gratitude to the voice cast as well. As a kid, it really felt like these characters were speaking to me. It felt like I had to stop these villains from conquering the world, and the new voice actors' portrayal of the characters were so great, specifically Lex Lang and Greg Eagles, since they have been voicing their respective characters for over 10 years at this point.
Oh, hey Carlos, hey John, hey Faltor. This is Lex Lang, the voice of Dr. Neo Cortex, and many more. I absolutely love playing Dr. Neo Cortex. It's always been one of my very favorite roles to play in the video game work that I've had over the years. Cortex is just so much fun. It's great to infuse that element of humor into Cortex as well. It gives people something to be happy about and something to laugh about. I initially auditioned for the part. Clancy Brown, who is an on-camera actor and who also happens to be a friend of mine, was expanding his on-camera career at the time, and I was blessed to get the part. And so it's been a lot of fun developing the character into a little bit more of a humorous character. And so overall, it's been just a terrific time. And if you'd like to do more with this sort of little interview we're doing, feel free to email me. Anyway, I wanted to wish you well, and you wanted Cortex to give a little shout out. So, oh yes, there's Dr. Neo Cortex here. Special kudos to Leader of the Saints, as well as Saint of Time and Saint of Music. So get your bad self going and have a good time, you saints. Anyway, hope that you're all having a great day, and hope to hear from you and talk to you again sometime soon. And keep on playing Crash Bandicoot. And get me crystals!
Mr. Lang, I have 2 questions for you. First question is, what made you want to get into voice acting?
Let's see, I never really thought about getting into voice acting per se. I started as an actor in high school and in college, and it was mostly in theater. So I was in all the theater shows. After college, I did some theater, and then I started doing some stand-up comedy, and I eventually went to music school. While I was at music school in Los Angeles, I became the spokesman for the school. So anytime anyone had any interest in the school, they would send them like a video, and I was the person in that video. It was the Musicians Institute in Hollywood, and I went to the guitar side of it. So someone would send for something, and I'd be the guy on camera going, Hollywood, California, the entertainment capital of the world, and here in Hollywood is the Musicians Institute. Let's take a look around, and I'd show them the whole tour type thing. Well, as a result of being the spokesman for the school, there was a director of a movie that was being made that called the school and wanted somebody to come out and show the actors on set how to look like they were playing the guitar, because none of them were musicians. And while I was out there showing them windmills and jumping off the risers and all that kind of stuff, the director said, "You wouldn't happen to be an actor, would you?" And I said, as a matter of fact, yeah, that's really my roots. And he said, okay, you're in the movie. So they put me in this movie. And on the set, I met somebody who still is a really dear friend of mine. He was a pretty well-established on-camera actor. And so a few months later, we'd become really good friends. We were roommates, and he was doing a movie in Vancouver called Susie Q. And the woman that was playing his girlfriend on that movie was a lady named Amy Jo Johnson, who was the Pink Power Ranger at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so while we were he was doing the movie, we'd all gone out to dinner after they were done shooting one day, and then I started doing sort of a little bit of my comedy act, which had some different impressions and things like that in it. And she said, "You'd be a great voice actor." And I said, "What do you mean voice actor? There is no like commercials or radio or something?" Because at the time there was no voice acting in video games. There was no anime yet, and it was really limited what you could do with animation. It was like The Simpsons weren't around yet. There was no like Family Guy style of animated series where there was a lot of dialogue and stuff. It was mostly like Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, all that stuff. And there's not a lot of dialogue in those except for the main characters of like Bugs Bunny and those guys, right? And they already had Bugs Bunny. I didn't, it's not something I could do. And so she introduced me to the producer at the Power Rangers, and I did some characters for him one day, and he said, "You'd be great. I'd love to have you in what's called the Loop Group, which is a bunch of background voice actors who fill in all the spaces where they need voices, whether it's a restaurant scene or people running away from the monsters or police radios or whatever it is, all the extra stuff, fight scenes and stuff." So that's kind of where I got started. And as soon as I was like starting in that part of the business, I met my wife. Her name's Sandy Fox, and she had been doing voice acting already for several years before I met her. And so she helped me get an agent and my demo and all the other stuff you need to do. And then I just kind of kept with it and started doing Western animation, and anime kind of took off, and I was right in there for anime. And video games eventually started having more memory capabilities. Like when I started, a video game had like 16 megabytes, which is absolutely nothing to try to put dialogue onto. It's like you can't fit anything. Now it's like terabytes full of, it's like DVDs full of cutscenes longer than movies, right? I'm in my 30th year now of doing it, so it's been a fun ride watching it evolve and grow along the way. Hi.
Say hi.
Hi. Did she ever watch Curious George? Does she know what that show is? Yeah, because I played the doorman and his dog Hundley.
Wait, huh?
The doorman and his dog Hundley. Yep, that's me.
See, that's more for me. That's for me now. Like I'm like, hey, I watched that with my cousins.
Yeah,
like I didn't know you played the doorman.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I've been that for about 16 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was telling Carlos and John that you're part of my childhood.
Absolutely.
Crash Bandicoot was one of my all-time favorite games. Still is. And ironically, one of my favorite characters was Neo Cortex.
Oh yes, Dr. Neo Cortex here.
So my second and last question is, how did the Neo Cortex voice ever come about?
Well, I had to audition for it. Clancy Brown, who's now actually a good friend of mine. At the time, I didn't know him. I just knew of him. He was the voice before me. There were a couple of voices before him too, but he had done a couple of the games. And he is also an on-camera actor who has a really fantastic career. Like he's a really talented guy, real nice guy. And he was working on a show, I think it was called Carnival or something like that at the time. And he just decided it was something that he wasn't going to do anymore, the Cortex voice. And so he moved on to doing his on-camera stuff. And so I auditioned with probably 300 or 400 other people, and they showed us samples of Clancy Brown doing Cortex. We all got like 10 or 12 samples of that. I can remember one line was like he was saying, "The race is mine." He was like, "The race is mine." Anyway, so I did the audition, and I just tried to sound as much like the version that Clancy had done, really like the evil scientist kind of guy, keep it fun. He had certain elements of fun in his performances too, That's how I did it, is I auditioned, and then they called me and said I got the part.
It's like you were meant to voice Cortex. I can't picture anyone else voicing Cortex.
So my first one is, have you ever played any of the Crash Bandicoot games? And if so, what's the best one that you've played in your opinion?
I played a few of them, actually. I played some of the mobile games. I played Twin Sanity. I played like crazy because that was the first one I did it, and I really wanted to. I think it was a PS2 at the time. I loved Twin Sanity. It was just so fun. It was a fun game. It was my first run at doing Cortex, and I also played the Insane Trilogy when it came out. That was a little much harder than the original 3 games when they came out. Suddenly it became much more difficult to get through all the levels. So
Yes.
that one I didn't play as long. I mean, I got as far as I could get, but I just got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't have enough time to invest in getting good at this level, But then when It's About Time came out, I played that quite a bit, and that was really fun. That was also difficult, but doable. Crash Team Racing and Crash Team Rumble I play a little bit. My favorite still is Twinsanity, probably, because it was just kind of fun. Overall, I like the levels and everything that were there.
Seeing as you provided the voice for Cortex after Clancy Brown, your Cortex voice is a lot more comedic. What was your initial audition for the character like? Was it more serious, or were you the comedic Cortex we all know and love today?
It was more serious. It was more, I tried to, as I was growing my career, part of it was doing what we call a sound-alike or celebrity voice matching. So I was already doing a lot of voice matching at the time. And so what I tried to do is like match it. The comedic stuff didn't really start until I got to the voiceover session for Twinsanity. We were just going through the lines and stuff, and the director and the producers said, we really want to like add some humor, like infuse it with some humor, this character, because even though he's serious and he's the bad guy, the villain or whatever of the game, we want him to be sort of like incapable of actually taking over the world, even though that's his whole thing. He wants to rule the world, he wants to get rid of Crash, that's the whole, it's like we want to make it so he believes that he can, but anyone knowing his character knows that he probably can't. And so we said, let's just make it a little more flamboyant. And then when we started doing the actual dialogue, after 2 or 3 lines, I started improvising a little bit. And the director really liked all the improvised dialogue I was doing. He said, why don't you just read the line as we wrote it and then improvise completely whatever you'd like to after each line. So I did that like for Twinsanity. And then the following games, they tried to write what they thought I would improvise. Sort of like they tried to write in that style. It didn't work as well as far as the character goes, but it was still funny. They had some good humor in it. The comedic side of it was really after I got into the booth and we started talking with the director and the producer and stuff.
So I know you mentioned Neocortex was one of your favorite characters, but which one is your all-time favorite character?
It's really hard to pick one out of 500. I have characters in anime, I have characters in video games, I have characters in Western animation. I'll say my top 15 maybe, but of them, like I'm a big Star Wars fan, for example. When I was a kid, I would go, and back then they were just called sci-fi conventions. They weren't like Comic-Cons or anything yet, but I would go cosplaying as Han Solo because I really loved Star Wars so much. Me and my friends would be, Luke and Leia and Chewie and everybody. Imagine fast forward like 20 years later, and then I get to audition and then be cast as Han Solo for video games and Lego and all kinds of other stuff. For me, that's like an all-time favorite, to be actually Han Solo for a real Star Wars thing. To me, it's just like, wow, dream come true. I've also gotten a chance to play Batman a few times. And my brother, who unfortunately passed away a few years back, Batman was his ultimate favorite character of all time. And because of that, I had exposure to a lot of Batman stuff. And so when I had the chance to be Batman, it was really another like super dream come true. I'm in this anime right now called Jujutsu Kaisen, or JJK people call it. And I play this character named Suguru Geto. I really like playing that character a lot because it's got a lot of levels to it and it's really fun. Neocortex is absolutely one of my favorite all-time characters. Dr. Doom, I played in a few video games and also in an animated series called Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. There's an anime that was one of the very first big animes I did called Rurouni Kenshin, and I played a character named Sanosuke, and that was a big favorite. The Doorman, we were just talking Curious George. The Doorman has been really fun, and that's been extra great because every time I go to the session, I get to be with other like really prolific voice actors like Frank Welker and Jeff Bennett and Reno Romano, and these guys have been around forever and they do so many things. Like Frank Welker plays Curious George, the monkey, but he's also Scooby-Doo, and he plays 1,000 different characters. Like, he's so good.
Do you have your list of least favorite characters?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny because as an actor, anytime I get a call that I've been cast in something, that is a good thing. I'm really grateful for it, so I try not to look at it as like, I didn't like that. But if I had to say most difficult sessions, there was a video game called Evolve that I played this like Norseman guy, half machine, half Norseman, named Torvald, and he had like a little over 2,000 lines in the game, but almost everyone, like 1,600 of them, were screamed, like really loud screams, and for literally like I had 3 sessions that were 4 hours long each, and throughout those entire sessions, I would just scream the entire time. So at the end of the session, I was like, "Okay, I'll see you guys later." You know, like I literally couldn't talk. So that probably ranks pretty high up there. The other type of session that I'm not as fond of is when I go to a session and I'm not sure who I'm playing until I get there. It'll be a character that I would have liked to have known that I was playing beforehand, so I could put some time into, you know, finding out about it a little bit, or, you know, researching it a little. But overall, most of the characters are always, you know, I'm happy to have them. There is one actually that I look back on. It's the only character that I've ever quit from being. There was an anime series called Blue Dragon. I played Blue Dragon. I did the first like 50 episodes, and Blue Dragon would do this giant roar when he'd spin around and he would do this giant roar and shoot this, you know, fire breathing thing out. The the animation was always exactly the same. And so I had asked them, can you guys record this once and then just pull it and play it next episode when he does that same turn and scream? Because it would always like really tear up my throat, because it was like, you know, like this really big giant scream for like 9.5 seconds. Finally, I was just like, guys, you know, I love you, but my throat is ripped to beyond shreds after I do this job each time, and it ruins me for a couple days, so I have to resign from this job. And that's the only one. If I had to say my least favorite, that was probably it. And, you know, as an actor, you never want to like leave a part, you know, especially because of something as simple as that they could fix, you know, like creating a little library and using that.
My question was mainly like, is there any life advice you have for like anybody, like not just if they're trying to get into voice acting, just in general, how to live their lives? Any like advice you can give to people to maybe help them out, or just to get them thinking about something?
Sure. I have a few things actually I could say. Looking back on life, I would have to say, you know, if there's something that you love doing, like absolutely love doing it, do it. Like, let that be what you go after. I forgot which author wrote it, but somebody said, like, follow your bliss, you know, like, don't worry about people telling you it can't be done. Voice acting is an example. Like, if you really love acting, and you really love creating characters with your voice and having fun and dubbing things and stuff, like, that is what you love to do. If people tell you, oh, it's so hard to get in the business, don't, you know, you're going to waste your time, you'll never make it, this and that, just don't listen to them. Just follow the love of doing it. And that could be for anything. It could be artistic, it could be accounting, it could be medicine, it could be, you know, an engineer or driving a forklift, whatever. It could be anything. If you really love doing it and you think, like, this is really fun, I love doing it, go after it. Like, really continue to take one step at a time, and don't think too much about like the end game. Think about the present moment game. Like be happy in the present moment, you know. The other thing would be, and I've found this out in the voice acting career and also just in life in general, is if you can be kind to others and generous and try to have some empathy for others, what they're going through, you tend to relate to other people better. And, you know, if you sympathize with others and be kind to other people, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it's so powerful. If you can just be kind to other people and generous, the world will reflect that back to you, you know. Stay positive, you know. Everybody has a bad day, that's for sure. Like, everybody has a day where they feel like they're defeated, or they feel like how am I going to make it? How am I going to get enough money to do the rent? How am I going to get enough money to pay the bill? Like, everybody has those days. And just know you're not alone if you're feeling that, like that crunch of pressure. Just take a few breaths. For me, what really helped is I got into meditating. You know, you can look on YouTube, like, meditation and stuff. It's as simple as closing your eyes and just taking a few deep breaths and just focusing on your breathing. You know, you don't have to learn some special technique or go through a special school. It's just like getting centered and, you know, allowing yourself to relax. You know, follow what you love, be kind to others, and know that if you're struggling through something, that it will pass. You heard people say, this too will pass, it will pass, you know, like, It's like if you catch a cold, you know, it feels really crappy for a couple days, but it passes eventually, you know, and then you're like, okay, I feel better. Same thing with like being sad for a day or two, or frustrated or scared about something. If you just kind of breathe through it, it'll pass and you'll be good to go. I hope your channel does well and you guys follow your happiness as well, you know. I see you got a beautiful baby there.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, that's a blessing in itself, you know. You can find the joy in looking into their eyes, you know, just like, I'm sure it's tough. There's lots of tough times, you know, putting food on the table and all that other stuff that goes with parenthood, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But, you know, don't miss out on the joy part of the connection that you have. It was a little girl that I saw. Was that a little girl? Yeah.
Correct.
You know, don't miss out on the connection that you guys get to have as father and mom, because that's you'll look back later and go, wow, that was so that was so blissful, that was so powerful, you know, because there's only one of you, there's only one of her, and you know, you get to experience that relationship together like nobody else. It could be as simple as like watching her play and you're just like, you know what a beautiful little soul that's right there, you know, and then let that happiness fill your heart, you know.
That's exactly how it be. Like earlier before the Zoom call, I was putting her to bed, and just to throw it out there, she loves listening to Metallica. And you know, I was playing one of their new songs. During the middle of it, I look at her, she's taking a nap, and I'm like, wow, I got a little girl.
That's so sweet, man. I love it. Yeah, so you guys, you know, try to stay happy, stay open, stay loving, and you guys are going to just do great in life. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and very cool. Glad to talk with you guys. You have a good rest of your night, okay?
You as well. Good
night.
Yeah, you too. You have a good one.
Okay, bye. Oh, yes, Cortex says goodbye, too. Now get me, Crystal.
It's very interesting to think how these voice actors had to take old lines from old games and make it their own with their performances. Wow, I am happy to be a Crash Bandicoot fan. Here's to many more games in the future, Crash.
Guys, thank you so much for letting me review these games with you. It was a lot of fun.
Nah, man, thanks for joining last minute. Dude, you're awesome.
I agree. Baltor, you are awesome. What's next for you, man?
Maybe soap operas for men? Maybe? No, you're not getting any contacts for that.
Okay.
So what do you guys want to do now?
I was thinking we do this Blasto challenge with no weapons.
No weapons? Hell yes. Let's do it.
The fuck you get shit?